It's great to be with you. My wife Ann and I first visited this city 27 years ago, and we're confronted with the realities of more people than we had ever experienced in such a small, dense population. And God used that experience to begin to break our hearts for this part of the world. That resulted in us spending 6 years living in China and 7 years living in Singapore. We have two grown children, and both of them spent their whole life growing up in Asia. And so when I got off the plane last night and made the way to the hotel, the sights and the smells and the tastes just felt like home. So it's great to be home. It's great to be with you and to ask and answer a question: why Indigitous? Why Indigitous? 8 months ago, this didn't exist. It's a new idea. It's a new vision, something that God has put on several of our hearts. And in these next few minutes together, I hope I can make that very clear. Indigitous is a mashup of two words. Indigenous, which means locally grown, locally cultivated, locally organic, if you will, and digital. I think that's pretty clear. It is a movement passionate about connecting people to Jesus using digital strategies. And when Jesus spoke to 11 men on a hillside just before he ascended, he gave them a commission. And through extension over 2,000 years of history, that commission has come down to us, has it not? And he said all authority had been given to him, and he asked them and commanded them to do what? To make disciples of all nations, of all ethnic groups. And we know if we fast forward to the last chapter of the Bible, the last book of the Bible in Revelation, we're told that people from every tongue, every tribe, every people, and every nation will be present. And so that's the challenge. You had 11 men whose propensity was not to obey, whose propensity was not to get out and get the job done, who were given this amazing task with very limited technology, with limited global experience, and they were asked to get the message everywhere, to everybody. And here we stand at our point in history with an amazing opportunity. So why Indigitous? I want to give you 4 reasons, really 4 words, 4 ideas about why Indigitous has come into play. The first one is God. This is about God. This is about His vision. It's about His plan for the nations. It's about what He's doing in history at this amazing time. For us, this is not new. Obviously, like I just said, this is a 2,000-year-old vision, but it's becoming much more real for us in the digital space. Just over a year ago, I was traveling. Part of my role as vice president of a global strategy with a global missions organization called Campus Crusade, or CRU, from the U.S., is that I get to see what God is doing around the world in a way that I think very few believers in history have gotten to see. The scope and the depth of how He is moving now. As I mentioned, my wife Ann and I lived in China during a period that was estimated by missiologists to have 4 times the fruitfulness that we observed in the book of Acts. 4 times the fruitfulness. And many of you here, as I look around, I know you, and you have experienced that, and you have witnessed that. It's also a great time of oppression, a great time of squeezing, of attack, of governments and powers and leaders who do not honor the name of Christ. And so we are at war, in a sense. Some of you have lived that out. You've seen that. And this is a challenge that we face. And I was on a trip about a year ago where I had a chance to be in several continents in just a few weeks. I was in North America with business leaders and executives. Then the Lord took me to Africa, where I was with several of our missions leaders who work in the digital space. And we're seeing incredible responsiveness to websites and offers of the gospel. But at that point, the backup of being able to follow up was 180 days. We had 30,000 hot contacts that we had not been able to follow up. And so the demand was far exceeding the supply of what we could do to follow up people who were legitimately questioning and finding God online and asking questions. They were hungry for Christ, and we could not meet the need. And part of that problem was because it was through a very centralized approach, a centralized set of websites, and there was just no way to meet the demand. I flew from South Africa to Thailand, and I met with some emerging leaders, some of whom are sitting in this room, some Chinese leaders, and heard about what God was doing through their leadership as young leaders coming up in the church and parachurch missions. And as I sat on the beach in Thailand, I was looking out at the ocean, and I was reading through, on my device, the book of Habakkuk. As an obscure prophet that it wrote 2,700 years ago. But he really captured so much of what God's heart and his plan is. And I sat there, and there was a flower that had washed up in exquisite detail, beautiful flower, purple, white, and pink. And I just sat there and looked at the veins and the petals and thought, how amazing, thinking about some of what Simon talked about, God's creation, his poetic glory. And there was also a shell that was kind of rolling in the surf at my feet, and I had these two objects, a beautiful shell and a beautiful flower, and then nothing but ocean in front of me. And as I was reading through the book of Habakkuk, I came across this passage that I believe was a message from God that relates to us today. And Habakkuk had been asking the Lord a couple of questions. Two main questions in the first chapter. Lord, why are you taking so long to fulfill your vision? It was a question of timing. And then he said, why are you using unjust people and unjust rulers to achieve your purposes? It doesn't make sense. Your people seem oppressed, but the unrighteous, those who are violent, those who are destructive, those who are unjust, seem to be winning. And it doesn't seem to make sense. And God said, but I'm using those people to achieve my plan. And then he says this in answer to Habakkuk's question. In Habakkuk chapter 2, he says, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, that the one who reads it may run. May I suggest that this is one of the few promise verses for digital in Scripture. Make it plain on tablets. And as he continues through the chapter, he explains why in his timing, in his way, in his sovereign plan, it will come to pass. And ultimately, Habakkuk can relax because he says in verse 14, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And you can picture sitting on the side of the ocean, looking out, and reading this verse and getting a sense of this is what God is going to do. And we now, with the advent of technology just in the last century, with radio, then television, print media, mass media, the internet, mobile, social technology. And I realize as I say all this, but I'm preaching to the choir because that's why we're here. We believe this. But we are within reach, my friends, of this vision actually becoming realized. That the 7 billion people on the planet are within arm's reach or device's reach of the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So the first reason for Indigitous is because of God, his heart, his glory, and his promises. And our job is to make the vision clear. You think about somebody that communicated very profound concepts very simply. Think about Jesus. Think about Jesus' whole ministry summarized in a 10-word tweet. Love God, love people, follow me, make disciples, back soon. Wasn't that the sum of his message? It's that clear. It's that simple. Our job is to make the vision clear. So after God, the second reason for Indigitous is call. As missionaries in the digital space, we've always been called to go where the people are. Where are people today? People are mobile. I want you to think about your last 12 hours and what you did on this device. What did you do? What did you do? Facebook? Connected with people? How else? WeChat? Email? Candy Crush. I mean, I flew here, I checked in, I've changed seats with this. Scheduling. Did anybody actually make a phone call? We connect with people. But let me ask you a question. Was there ever a time when you said, I'm going to step out of my real life and I'm going to step over into my digital life and I'm going to do all this stuff right now and then I'm going to step back into my real life? I don't think so. It's seamless today. That line between offline and online has been blurred forever because of this. We used to talk about online ministry or virtual ministry. Those days are over. It's just how we live. So God's call. He's called us to reach the world. I realize this is probably a little small for some of you to read in the back, but we did some research in our organization last year. And we did it in 21 countries. We asked over 1,000 people and did interviews in terms of how to make the vision concrete. We asked people, do you know a true follower of Jesus Christ? And to discern that, we asked them 4 questions. Do you know someone who tells others regularly about Jesus Christ? Does this person show compassion and love? Does this person appear to love Jesus and obey Jesus? And does the life of this person appear different because of Jesus? Here's what we found. Globally, on average, 51% knew a true follower of Jesus. Highest was in Africa with 59%, and then South America, 54%, Asia, 53% here. North America, 46% knew one. Australia, 42%, and then Europe with 29%. So on average, 49% of the world does not know a single person that they would identify as a true follower of Jesus. So how is that going to help us see God's vision fulfilled? There's 7 billion people, 5 billion unchurched. 49% don't know a true follower of Jesus. As it was 2,000 years ago, it is today. The harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. And then, after God and his call, we come to culture. It seems like it would be easy then to just trumpet the good news. But the reality is that cultures are so micro-segmented now that people can't receive that news if it's just generically broadcast. That's represented in this room. This is our 3rd Indigitous conference. The first one was in Canada. The second one was in Panama, in South America. Here's this one. And I've been to all 3, and I can tell you each one is completely different. It feels different. The food's different. The languages are different. The attitudes are different. The approaches will be different. The workshops are different. And the end results will be different. But the message is the same. We have to customize it. Culture matters. This has always been true in its approach in the New Testament. Rapid appointment of indigenous leaders in each location in Paul's church planting teams. minimized cultural friction by ensuring that qualified, accepted insiders handled the primary functions of leadership. Who are those people? In the digital space, it's you. You are the indigenous leaders. You are the ones that will minimize cultural friction because you know how to apply this in your setting. Indigitous is about you. Because there isn't going to be one approach, one tool, one site, one app, one video or link that connects 5 billion people to Jesus Christ. We're counting on you. And so it connects you to the people that share this passion. It connects you to strategies that are proven and working. And it connects you to projects that will help create the next strategies that will work. That's why we have Indigitous. And we're starting it now, but there's no reason why you couldn't take this back and have your own Indigitous event at your own church or with your own friends in your own setting. We want it to spread. Why Indigitous? Because God calls you to reach your culture. I'm going to show a brief video here to give you an idea, and then I'll close. You ready?
We don't make sports cars. We don't make SUVs. We don't make hybrids. And we don't make luxury sedans. We only make one thing. The ultimate driving machine.
What does that have to do with us? Well, in Indigitous, we don't make apps, we don't write blogs, we don't make videos, we don't build sites, we don't just build digital tools. We do one thing. We make disciples. Thank you, and God bless you.